Yo, this chapter is insane, from everything Scoper reveals about the past to Shanks' 25 plus year mystery finally being solved that goes way back to chapter 1 of the series, to Luffy and Zoro's next big power-ups and what they're gonna look like, to what happened between Loki and his father, to Loki becoming a Straw Hat, and it just goes on if you can believe it. So make sure to stay tuned for this, the craziest of chapters. Now chill, parking within, and smash that like button if you enjoy seeing One Piece videos like this one on the channel and want to keep them coming. Make this the video you join the Nakama if you haven't by subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss future One Piece reviews and updates. And now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. This chapter is called A Terrible Day, and as we'll see, it's referencing the day Loki supposedly unalived his father, King Harold. So soon enough, we get very important information that we've been wondering about, and we even guessed that during previous chapter reviews. One of the theories proved to be dead on. It seems as Scoper tells Luffy to pay attention to how he uses Conqueror's Haki. Related to this, he says the enemies are definitely not immortal, despite their seeming endless regeneration abilities. So clearly the key will be that mastery and improvement of Conqueror's Haki usage. Then we get an absolutely crazy Zoro and Sanji moment, and people say that I'm unfair to Sanji, but it's not me, guys. It's Oda himself. I'm just the messenger. Case in point right here, Scoper says, looks like it's not just one person here who has Conqueror's Haki. Here Sanji hilariously approaches Scoper, his Pirate King crew counterpart, and asks, is it me? I knew it. I won't let Mosshead and Jinbei's stock be the only ones to rise. But Scoper just ignores him. It is in fact the Mosshead he mentioned. Scoper says, swordsman over there. Looks like your body is used to it. Although we knew he had it, Zoro is surprised and asks, I have Conqueror's Haki, aka the color of the Conqueror? Luffy actually says, huh? You didn't know? It's been leaking, you know. I love how Zoro and Luffy are so close, and yet the whole time Luffy was aware and felt his Conqueror's Haki and Zoro had no idea. But man, poor Sanji just got wrecked there, and again, it's Oda, guys. It's not me. I'm just letting you guys know what's happening. But I will say it does make sense, in my opinion, when you look at their goals. Zoro wants to be the best swordsman. He wants to be number one, just like Luffy wants to be the number one pirate. And in turn, that means conquering all the others. Sanji is competitive with Zoro for sure, but in a broader sense, he wants to find the all blue. Nothing wrong with that goal, but it's definitely not the same Conqueror vibe that Zoro, wanting to be the greatest swordsman, and Luffy, wanting to be the greatest and freest pirate, give off. Scoper then chastises Zoro and says, what a joke. Haki is only useful if you can recognize it and control it. Is this how you intend to support your captain, who is one of the 4 emperors? Then Zoro says, uncharacteristically, sorry. However, at the same time, this hypes up Zoro to me big time, because chances are, when he does start to recognize and control his Conqueror's Haki properly, he'll be all the stronger, and that's saying a lot because he's already insanely strong. So even as Scoper is criticizing him, Oda is actually hyping up his potential. Then an angry Sanji asks Scoper, hey old man, what about me? But he's interrupted by Loki and Hyruden arguing. Now, conveniently for Sanji fans, although Sanji did get the worst of this exchange for sure, but conveniently it hasn't been 100% confirmed that he doesn't have it, aka Scoper didn't tell him point blank, no, you definitely don't have it. So because of this interruption, we can't say, oh, 100% Scoper said that Sanji doesn't have it. But if he does, it definitely doesn't seem to be as far along and noticeable as Zoro's. And like I said, his end goal is just not a Conqueror end goal like Zoro's and Luffy's, if you ask me. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just doesn't end up having it. Not like everyone needs to have it. While it was obvious for a good while now that Zoro already had it. So on to the Giant Brothers argument, and Loki says, disgraceful Hyruden. You gonna let outsiders save your homeland? Elbaf has me, end quote. And it's awesome to hear Loki say that. Clearly, despite how much everyone looked down on him and thought the worst of him, he still views himself as Elbaf's protector and wants to help. Such a great character, honestly. Oda did such a great job with him. Hyruden responds, with you, there's even the possibility of you helping the government side. You did that kind of thing on that day. How can we trust you? And there's a big reveal in and of itself. Not for what actually happened that day, but from Hyruden and most people's perspective, it seems clear that Harold was against the world government, at least according to this line, and Loki helped the world government by unaliving him. That's the implication here at least, even though, as we'll see, that's definitely not what actually happened. And I've been calling this forever what's about to happen, but suddenly Luffy says something huge that takes Loki by surprise. Luffy says, "Hey Loki, why don't you become one of my Nakamas? Hiruden, if Loki is part of my crew, you can release him, right?" Now yes, it's not confirmed yet, and we all know Loki will decline at first, like even Zoro and Sanji did if you go back, but the fact that Luffy wants him is a big deal and definitely a huge step in the right direction, a giant step, one might even say. Zoro and Sanji, for their parts, don't think it's a good idea due to Loki's size and the amount of food he eats. But in a fantastic world like One Piece, where everything seems possible, I'm sure they could iron out the details. Hiruden realizes that Luffy can tell by instinct that Loki is trustworthy, but he refuses. And Loki also declines Luffy's proposal, saying he won't follow anybody. And honestly, that's very similar to Zoro's own recruitment, so I am not deterred since I think everyone could foresee that Loki with his personality would decline at first, like it's just expected. Zoro and Sanji go to the Sun World with the giants except the brothers Hiruden and Loki. When they're alone, Scoper asks Hiruden to release Loki too. Scoper reveals that he and Shanks were also there at the castle when Harold's incident happened, but they didn't see the whole thing. Just when you thought this chapter wasn't great enough, let's throw Shanks into the mix as well. That's exactly what Oda does. Hiruden finally asks Loki to tell him everything now, and Loki starts the story referencing the title of the chapter when he says it was one really terrible day. A flashback starts and it takes place 14 years ago. Loki and Yarul were called to the castle. Loki looked friendly towards Yarul, and he's a bit taller than the Mountain Beard himself. Loki said he hates the world government since they killed Rocks, so he wanted to talk with his father. So right off the bat, this looks completely different than what Hiruden was implying. And we might finally solve the mystery of Yarul, who is honestly one of the most mysterious characters for me right now. Is he secretly in cahoots with the world government? Whether he has good intentions or not, whether he thinks it's the best thing for the Giants or not, I'm not getting into that, but he's definitely a suspicious character to me. Anyways, when they arrive at the stone entrance, Loki stamped one giant soldier into the door to open it. Now remember this because it'll come up later, the stamping a giant into it. When they enter the throne room, Loki and Yarul see something shocking. Again, why didn't we hear this from Yarul himself? Harold is being stabbed by several of his own soldiers. We only see Harold's silhouette, so we don't know if he was transformed into a demon or not, but it looks like Harold has horns, which we know he ripped them out in the past, and wings, which would imply he has transformed, perhaps against his will like we saw with Dory and Bragi. So even if Loki was to stop this demon version of Harold, we can all see that that's not his fault and he shouldn't be blamed for it. Yarul says, "Harold?" ? Loki says, "What do you guys think you're doing?" ? Meanwhile, we see Scoper and Shanks having a bath in the thermal baths outside Scoper's house. I just love the contrast between like the chaos and insanity in the castle and then this very chill environment. Pretty beautiful setup, I must say, as well. I wish I had the same setup outside of my own house. In this case, it's in a branch near the castle. Scoper is looking much younger here with just half his hair gray and only a black braid goatee and mustache. Here's possibly the craziest reveal of the chapter for me, and it was theorized before this moment, but the confirmation and to finally get it after all these years is insane. We discovered that Shanks had a tattoo on his left arm, just above the elbow. We can't see that tattoo close up, but this seems to finally explain what fans have been arguing about forever. Shanks was probably marked by Emu like the Holy Knights, and by giving up his arm, he escaped/rejected that control and fate. Sure, when he lost the arm to the sea monster, it could still show Luffy the dangers of the sea, but considering how strong Shanks was, it feels much better for there to be this other reason too. Like he needed to get rid of his arm no matter what anyways, and this happened to be a good opportunity. Suddenly, it all makes perfect sense, whereas before a lot of people criticized this part of the story. So complete props to Oda for seemingly a perfect landing here. Scoper then says to Shanks, "It's been such a long time since we shared a tub. Must have been 3 or 4 years?" But Shanks says, "Of course not. It's been a decade since Captain passed." So this little exchange in part reflects how different are the stages of life the two were in. For Shanks, he went from pretty much a kid to adult, while Scoper went from adult who has had his adventures to somewhat older adult. It makes sense that much more has changed for Shanks, so it makes sense he experienced the contrast in years much more than Scoper had. Scoper responds, "Ah, it's been that long, huh? Must have felt especially long for you." And Shanks says, "Indeed, my life has completely changed. To tell you the truth, I wanted to just live a life being some jolly pirate with Buggy. Because of that, there are so many things I want to know about Elbaf too. I still love the friendship and brotherhood between Shanks and Buggy. I feel like no one outside of them fully understands how awesome it is, but absolutely love these two and their dynamic." Scopper then says something huge. Let me know how you interpret it in the comments. Scopper says, "Well, you are the child of destiny." But then he says, "Let's not talk about these complicated things today, Shanks." Then they both talked about their adventures, reminiscing about old times, I guess you could say. Like when they met Dory and Broggy in Little Garden, and Ripley appears to greet Shanks. Finally, Shanks explained that he's in Elbaf because he wanted to talk to King Harold about something. At the same time, we see a mysterious shadow in the castle, opening the treasure room with the Elbaf legendary devil fruit in a chest. Then in a double page, we get another flashback further back this time. This one takes us back 109 years ago and is also very revealing. The narrator says, "Going back even further in time, 109 years ago, in a time where if you ask anyone who lives on the seas the thing you fear the most in this world, everyone will answer the giant pirates. We see the great Eric chasing a ship in the sea with a very young Dory and Broggy, Oimo, and Kashi. But we also see another giant ship docked in a human kingdom." The narrator continues saying, "At the same time, an official ship coming from the Kingdom of Giants acts as another reason as to why the name Elbaf is associated with absolute terror. Harold says, I heard they had a beautiful princess inside that castle. Go take a look. People are screaming." One of the giant soldiers that is with Harold looks for the princess through a castle window, but Harold stamps, keyword, him into the castle, destroying it. A lot like Loki earlier in this chapter. People flee from the kingdom while the king and princess cry in fear. Harold says, "Oops, I slipped." The giants say, "Your Majesty, please stop." We get the young Harold introduction. He looks very similar to his son Loki. He had short spiked hair and was very violent, clearly. Harold laughs and asks, "Who's your god now?" The narrator says Harold, the king of Elbaf, who ascended to his throne at the young age of 45 or 15 in human age, was a real jerk, so clearly Loki takes after his father. But let me know what you thought about this insane chapter with honestly way more giant reveals than I expected to get, and what you're most looking forward to in the next one. I gotta say, this chapter really delivered. And if you enjoyed this one as well, you won't want to miss this video on screen that YouTube says you'll like and subscribe for more One Piece, and I'll see you in the next one.